Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Puri Vrajakacharya Ashtotar Sata Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mayi Ki Jai Jamuna Mayi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna and welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam, with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami. It is Friday, November 22nd, 2024 in New York. And tonight, or this morning, we're starting with Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, Chapter 8, Text number 3. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tayo samma bhavalobho nikritischa mahamate tabhyang krodhascha hingsacha yaduruktihi svasa kalihi. Maitreya told Vidura, O great soul, from Dambha and Maya were born greed and nikriti, or cunning. From their combination came children named Krodha, anger, and Hingsa, envy. And from their combination were born Kali and his sister Durukti, harsh speech. Text 4. Duruktau kalir adhata bhayang mrityung cha sattama tayoscha mitunam yajne yatana nirayastata. O greatest of all good men, by the combination of Kali and harsh speech were born children named Mrityu, death, and Bhiti, fear. From the combination of Mrityu and Bhiti came children named Yatana, excessive pain, and Niraya, hell. Sangrahena maya khyata pratisargastavanaga trihi shruttvaitat pumang punyang vidhuno dyatmano malam. My dear Vidura, I have summarily explained the causes of devastation. One who hears this description 3 times attains piety and washes the sinful contamination from his soul. The creation takes place on the basis of goodness, but devastation takes place because of irreligion. That is the way of material creation and devastation. Here, it is stated that the cause of devastation is adharma, or irreligion. The descendants of irreligion and falsity, born one after another, are bluffing, cheating, greed, cunning, anger, envy, quarrel, harsh speech, death, fear, severe pain, and hell. All these descendants are described as signs of devastation. If a person is pious and hears about these causes of devastation, he will feel hatred for all these, and that will cause his advancement in a life of piety. Piety refers to the process of cleansing the heart. As recommended by Lord Chaitanya, one has to cleanse the dust from the mirror of the mind, and then advancement on the path of liberation begins. Here also, the same process is recommended. Malam means contamination. We should learn to despise all the causes of devastation, beginning from irreligion and cheating, and then we shall be able to make advancement in a life of piety. The possibility of our attaining Krishna consciousness will be easier, and we shall not be subjected to repeated devastation. The present life is repeated birth and death, but if we seek the path of liberation, we may be saved from repeated suffering. Om Jnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanang Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So Maitreya Muni is explaining to Vidura the causes of devastation here in the course of describing the descendants of that he started describing, the descendants of Brahma from the previous chapters before we got into the narration of Daksha and Shiva, etc. So here we're getting a list of family names here that are quite unusual. And yeah, so these are described as the children of Lord Brahma: irreligion, falsity, bluffing, cheating, etc. And it just gets worse from there as we read. Yeah, there's anger, envy, kali, harsh speech. Kali, of course, means just quarrel in general. And he, Maitreya Muni, addresses Vidura in this, in the fourth verse, as where does it say there? I'm looking for it in the Sanskrit. Oh yes, Sattama, oh greatest of all good men. He's explaining all these things to Vidura, but he's saying that you are the greatest of all good men. I'm going to tell you all these very unhappy things, but basically you don't have to worry about them. Like when Krishna consoles Arjuna that he's describing all these unfortunate persons, and you don't, but because you, Arjuna, you're a pious person. You have all the good qualities. So these things don't have to be, you don't have to be afraid of having those. I'm not talking about you, in other words. But here in the purport to 5, Prabhupada is saying that for a pious person to hear about all these negative personalities, negative character traits, etc., it's good because they don't like them. He says that he should despise these things. And when a pious person despises bad things, that's apparently good. Of course, I'd be curious to hear, Maharaj, if you'd like to. I had a question about these personalities that it seems more that what the personages listed here are all qualities or conditions of life that are all unfortunate to the maximum. And are we to understand that these are all persons? That's my conviction, but it seems like what a family that must be to have all these persons gathered around the dinner table, and what kind of conversations take place. But are we to understand that these are actually persons?
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Shanti Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachayane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashkati Deshatani. Well, I'm sure one could read these figuratively, but Srila Prabhupada invariably takes a literal reading of things. And so that's how we're inclined to accept things. And we see it's not unusual for destructive tendencies to run in a family. You get crime families who are, you get crime families. When I was a kid, we had there were 2 boys who lived on the other end of the block from me, and they were always angry and mean and exceedingly mean. My mother later told me that their father had invited my father to watch porn with him, which my father declined, but that was the family. And we find in so many instances that gambling, intoxication, meat eating, and illicit sex are common to a family. And these other qualities, we're reminded of demonic qualities, Dampo, Darpo, Bimanascha, Krodha, Parushamevacha, Agam, Cha, Bijatasya, Partha Sampadamasari. that there are people who are born with demonic qualities. And of course, they can be born anywhere. From King Anga, we got Bena, but of course, his mother was the daughter of death personified. So it's not surprising to find born in demonic, and of course, Prahlad the other way was born of Hiranyakashipu. So it's not invariable, but it's common for pious people to have pious children and demonic people to have demonic offspring. That's not surprising at all. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Maharaj. I was noticing also here that if a person is pious and hears about these causes of devastation, he will feel hatred for all these, and that will cause his advancement in a life of piety. And so it almost seems like this also reminds me of what Prabhupada has to say in several places about the purifying effects of repentance for one's own untoward activities, that hatred for one's own misdeeds is itself purifying. So this is in the Bhagavatam, like so many other things are in the Bhagavatam, because it benefits the hearer, especially the pious hearer, to have an appropriately negative reaction to hearing these things. And that negative reaction apparently causes some advancement. So I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, we're not in the touchy-feely sampradaya and we just want to hear good things and things that are encouraging. Why do you have to speak all about these negative? Because it's purifying. It's purifying. The two other things. One is that also Prabhavanti Yuga Karmanha Kshayaya Jagato Ita. The demonic qualities lead in the Bhagavad Gita to activities that create destruction in the world. Kshayaya Jagata Ahita, nasty activities that cause destruction. And so we complain about destruction in the world, destruction of the environment, or this, that, but the underlying demonic qualities are responsible for these things. Also, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has a comment on 484 that's worth reviewing.
Let me just open that up if you don't mind, Maharaj. I'll be happy to read it.
There's one for 4 and one for 5.
Sorry, I didn't have that file open immediately. Yes, so Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti's commentary for text 4, he says, one may ask about the favorable and unfavorable elements for bhakti, the ultimate method described in the scriptures. The elements ending with hell, the family members of adharma, have been described as the elements to be avoided. And then in text 5, his commentary reads, Sangrahena means in summary. Pratisarga means destruction. The above description is called destruction because it is a cause of destruction. O sinless Vidura, you are not in this family of adharma. The description is purifying because by hearing it, one can avoid these items. And to contrast that with what we see so commonly, especially nowadays with the proliferation of media and 20,000 TV channels and YouTube channels, is that we become numb, that all of these symptoms of Kali and Adharma are just running rampant, and we become numb to them, but we should actually despise them. We have some things in the chat here. Praveen Krishna Prabhu points out that Parikshit Maharaj actually met Kali. So we have an instance of that personality showing up elsewhere in the Bhagavatam. Saraswati Devi says, Pranams Param Puja Maharaj and all the Vaishnavas. Vidura saw these bad qualities in his position as an advisor to his brother. And I personally struggle with irritability. I know some people have righteous indignation in various degrees too, and lash out. So if a person displays some of these qualities, then is it all fatal?
In Bhagavad Gita, perhaps it's in the purport to that verse you mentioned, Mashucha Sampadam Daivi, don't worry, Arjun, you have the divine qualities. Prabhupada comments that Arjun was of the divine nature, because he was considering, is this good or bad to fight with my brothers and cousins? Duryodhana didn't have to worry about that. He just could storm on in his envy and arrogance. But a person like Arjuna thinks, is this the right thing to do? Am I just being greedy for the kingdom? Raja Sukha Lobhena. So if a devotee struggles with irritability or struggles with pride or so on, so that's in one sense a good sign. The devotee is cognizant that I'm sometimes irritable, I'm sometimes proud, so I have to keep these in check. Of course, we're happier if we don't have those qualities to struggle with, but if they're there and we're struggling with them, well, the struggle is also a good sign. Righteous indignation. Well, of course, we'd have to further analyze it and say, well, what is it? What are the sources of this, or how is it shown? But if we're not indignant about unrighteousness, then we're probably dull, as Kendra Prabhu mentioned. That Prabhupada, what was that? He walked past some latrines that hadn't been cleaned, obviously, in a long time. And then he criticized his managers that you're walking by this every day and you're not doing anything. You're allowing them to remain this way. That means you've become inured to this. You have the same, you've picked up this quality of ignorance. And so for you, it's not an issue. So that shouldn't be there, that, well, any kind of unrighteousness, any kind of bluffing, cheating, falsity, and so on can go on. And we just sort of shrug and say, well, that's life. One should be indignant when there's unrighteous behavior. But how we display that, to what degree, in what circumstance, and in what way it comes out, that needs some tuning. That if we're, it needs some tuning, but we shouldn't be just sort of go along with every kind of sinful activity and sort of shrugging our shoulders. That's bad. Institutionally, that may happen, or individually, that may happen. We just say, that's the way it is, and then we tolerate and participate or condone. That's not at all good. That can result in serious consequences. But if we're always just storming, the other side is that I'm full of righteous indignation at the transgressions of others, and then I don't notice my own failings. That becomes one of the features mentioned by Rabindra Swarup Prabhu in his course on the cure of souls, where we become very attentive to the faults we find around us. And in that way, we don't have to worry about our own shortcomings. We can just be happy that we found those of others. That becomes another problem. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Tulsi Priya comments, once someone accused me of being, quote, too negative. I said that when you're negative about negative things, sinful activity, irreligion, etc., two negatives equal a positive.
Yes.
And she comments further, not exactly the same, but this line is often quoted from W.B. Yeats. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. And then a question, good people, quote unquote, good people, seem less inclined to be passionately intense, even about goodness. Why is that?
Because they're not passionate.
Hare Krishna. Any further comments or questions here before we move on to our text 6?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Jai. Praveen Krishna Prabhu says, devotees follow varying degrees of standards. If some who do not follow a higher standard, then despising the lower standard is aparad?
Well, first of all, despising low standards is not an aparad. There's no person called low standards whom we can offend. So we're despising the standard, not a person. But we may inappropriately despise Vaishnavas for not following this or that standard. So that we have to see who are we and what is our adhikar or our duty. Sometimes it's my duty. I'm a father, I'm a spiritual master, I'm a temple president, I'm a GBC man. I have to see these things and I have to say something. But I'm a junior. I myself am struggling with similar problems or worse. Then that's another story. We should be interested in helping others and not just in despising. As a rule, sometimes people really should be thrown out. They should be despised, practically speaking. Their activities are so disruptive or abominable that we shouldn't just say, well, this poor person, he's fallen, let me help him. Prabhupada said the temple should not be a place of lazies and crazies, and what to speak of really demonic persons who do the worst of things. So yes, come in, to point these things out, or to even to take an intolerant stance toward them may be appropriate, but it also may just be counterproductive, where we jump on whatever faults there are and drive everyone away because we don't have the expertise to help them and bring them up. So again, things need to be carefully weighed.
Thank you, Maharaj. Praveen Prabhu clarifies. He says a person is associated with the low standard. So yeah. Vijay Krishna Prabhu, good to see you here today. Would you be able to read our next verse?
I have a question.
Oh, wait, we have another question first.
It's
It's coming in just now. Before we move on, Tulsi Priya has another question here. Is it necessarily hypocritical to preach against lower standards, even if one is not personally following the higher standards. I once read that hypocrisy isn't the failure to practice what you preach, but when you don't believe what you preach.
I suppose there can be different opinions as to what constitutes hypocrisy, but generally hypocrisy is seen to be a contradiction between what you say and what you do. Feigning to be what one is not, or to believe what one does not. You pretend to believe what you don't believe, or to be what you aren't. The false assumption of an appearance of virtue or religion. That's hypocrisy in Merriam-Webster. Who's the authority, a reliable authority in such matters?
Shai, I think there may be an extension to that train of thought. She says, Ravinder Swarup Prabhu has often quoted, hypocrisy is the homage vice pays to virtue. And Murai Gupta Prabhu says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, is it advisable not to be too passionate about Krishna consciousness? Or are the problems of Rajaguna eliminated by Krishna consciousness?
Well, the problems of Rajaguna are eliminated by Krishna consciousness. Sagunan Samiti Chaitan Brahmabhuya Kalpate. Tada Rajas to Kam. So yes, one transcends passion by Krishna consciousness. But we get into linguistic things here, passionate about Krishna consciousness. To be passionate about Krishna consciousness, which I assume means intensely devoted to Krishna consciousness, differs from being in the material mode of passion. So it looks like we're facing a linguistic issue here rather than a factual problem.
All right, Krishna. All right, Gupta Prabhu says thank you. And Vijay Krishna Prabhu, are you able to read our text number 6?
Yes, Ekendra Prabhu, can you hear me?
Very clearly, sir.
Thank you very much, you're most kind. So, text 6. Atata kirtaye vamsham punya kirte kurudvaha svayambhu vasyapi manur hariram shamsha janmanaha. Translation. Maitreya continued, O best of the Kuru dynasty, I shall now describe before you the descendants of Swayambhuva Manu, who was born of a part of a plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. Lord Brahma is a powerful expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although Brahma is Jiva Tattva, he is empowered by the Lord, and therefore he is considered a plenary expansion of the Supreme Godhead. Sometimes it happens that when there is no suitable living being to be empowered to act as Brahma, the Supreme Lord himself appears as Brahma. Brahma is the plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Swayambhuva Manu was the direct son of Brahma. The great sage Maitreya is now going to explain about the descendants of this Manu, all of whom are widely celebrated for their pious activities. Before speaking of these pious descendants, Maitreya has already described the descendants of impious activities, representing anger, envy, unpalatable speech, quarrel, fear, and death. Purposely, therefore, he is next relating the history of the life of Dhruva Maharaj, the most pious king within this universe.
Thank you for reading, Prabhu. Some comments?
Just a question. I need to know, why is it that my speech becomes palatable whenever I am regularly chanting the Maha Mantra? Because it does happen to me.
The speech becomes palatable.
Because of my regular chanting of the Maha Mantra.
Sure, you've got honey on your tongue.
Of course, Maharaj. Thank you very much.
The two things that I would note here, one is, of course, Prabhupada discusses at some length, that Amshamsha, we're talking about descendants of, or portions of the plenary portion, Brahma, empowered by the Lord. Also that Maitreya, now he's gotten the Dharma family out of the way, so now he's keen to speak about the pious descendants of Manu, ready to clear the air, as it were. We necessarily have to speak about impious activities, but that's not our bread and butter. We don't want to go on and on and on about demonic affairs or demonic persons and lose sight of the activities of pious living beings, because that's the point. We particularly want to hear about the great devotees, those who are in relationship with the Lord, because that's conducive to devotional service. Hearing about the negative elements is also conducive, so it has its place. But if we just have a monokata of demonic activities, then we're going to lose the thread. Sometimes we're inclined to do that, to just go on and on and on. The demons do this, the demons do that, the demons do this, the demons do that. And that becomes our whole discourse. The demons this, they create wars, they create vaccines, they blow up this, they do that. And if we just become obsessed with the activities of the demons and don't turn to the activities of the devotees, then our minds are not going to get the spiritual nourishment that we need for advancement in devotional life. So Maitreya has described cheating, falsity, and so on. And throughout the Bhagavatam, there's discussion of the materialistic activities. There's the whole chapters of impious activities. But it's always in the greater context of advancement in Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you, Vijay Krishna Prabhu. Panchatattva Prabhu asks and comments, are there any jivas other than Lord Brahma who are considered plenary expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? This seems an extraordinary empowerment.
Well, plenary expansions. Plenary is an interesting, is the interesting word here. Plenary means full, but to what extent is that fullness manifest? because we have Vyasadeva, who's empowered expansion of the personality of Godhead. We have Lord Buddha, who's a empowered expansion of the personality of Godhead, Prithu Maharaj. So we have many. Brahma is one, but there are others who are mentioned as being powerful or empowered expansions of personality of Godhead. But they're not Vishnu Tattva in the sense that sometimes plenary expansion is our term for Vishnu Tattva expansion. So that doesn't apply here. Brahma, although Brahma sometimes may be that also, he may be the personality of Godhead himself taking on the role of Brahma, but he's usually a jiva. Hare Krishna.
If I may comment, the reason I ask is because I don't remember. I know of these empowerments, at least by book and by instruction, but I don't remember reading this description, plenary expansion, given to any other jiva. So that's why I brought up the subject. Kind of struck me.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure about, where the words fall, but I think our understanding is clear.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Saraswati Devi asks, is Hiranyagarbha Brahma a Vishnu Tattva?
And Praveen says, part of plenary expansion. I wonder whether he's addressing Saraswati or someone else. Hiranyagarbha Brahma.
Here in the translation, Swayambhuva Manu was born of a part of plenary expansion.
Okay, so that's, Hiranyagarbha is always a sort of complex topic for me. I'd have to go look at the relevant reference. Otherwise, when Brahma is referred to as Hiranyagarbha, then he's Jiva Tattva still.
Panchatattva Prabhu, would you be willing to read our next verses? There's 7 and 8. 7 is very short. Purport 8 is a little bit longer.
I'm always a little reluctant when I come late to class. I came a half an hour late, so I should be at the end of the queue. So, but if you want me to, I will.
It's 7:43. You're safely placed.
Okay. So 7. I'll take 7. Priyavrata padau Shatarupa pate sutau Vasudevasya kalaya Rakshayam jagatastito. Translation. Swayambhuva Manu had 2 sons by his wife Shatarupa, and the names of the sons were Uttanapad and Priyavrata. Because both of them were descendants of a plenary expansion of Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they were very competent to rule the universe, to maintain and protect the citizens. Purport. It is said that these 2 kings, Uttanapad and Priyavrata, were specifically empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unlike the great king Rishabha, who was the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Gurudasa Jayadvaita Swami Nityanamine. Om Ajnana Timarandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshum Litam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I don't have much to comment on this. Guru Maharaj, would you like to say something regarding this?
Well, Prabhupada makes clear that here they were specifically empowered but they weren't the personality of Godhead himself. So Rishabdev was, he's also an expansion of the personality of Godhead, but he's Godhead himself. So we have these two terms, Anksha and Kala. And generally, Anksha is a part, and Kala is part of a part. Or we have Swamsa and Vibhinamsha, which Prabhupada translates variously, but internal expansions and separated expansions. So Swamsa is the personality of Godhead expanding. It's an interesting term, expansion. That's the term that Prabhupada settled on for this characteristic of the personality of Godhead, that he can appear in other forms, or he can exfoliate his existence by appearing in different ways. So he's one, Vasudeva Sarvamiti, but he appears in all sorts of other ways. He appears as in counter forms and other forms of Godhead. He appears as the living entities. He appears through his other energies, even his material energy is an expansion of the personality of Godhead. That's sort of, it is a characteristic term that Prabhupada uses, not the most common term. An ordinary non-ISKCON member would probably say that the light bulb spreads its light throughout the room. We would say expands. Someone wants to grow a family, we say expands. So we use that term expands, an expansion, a lot. But Prabhupada uses it as the term to convey this capability of the personality of Godhead, that he can appear in multiple forms at once. He can expand himself in the rasa dance and be absolutely identical, indistinguishable forms. He can expand himself in as the husbands of 16,108 queens and be almost the same, but different. He can expand himself as Balaram, in which case he's the same but different. The complexion is different, the nature is somewhat different. So he can expand in these immediate Vishnu forms. He can expand as Narayan and Narayan's expansions, all Vishnu Tattva. And then Vibhinamsha, he can expand, as Prabhupada said, separated expansions. Vibhinna means, separated or differentiated. So these are the smaller expansions, the tiny expansions, the living entities. And then those living entities, some of them can be mentioned as empowered. So then they become incarnations, or they become empowered expansions. So we have all these terms that we use, which were ultimately meant to help us understand the capabilities of the personality of Godhead and the various manifestations of the personality of Godhead. The Mayavadis don't do that, or they're lax about it. So if God is everything, then everything is God. And if everything is God, I'm also God. And you're also God. And all of that is true, but only in a limited sense. And they ignore the limitations. Parasha Shaktir Vividaiva Shriyate, we recognize that the personality of Godhead has variegated energies, and we take that from the Upanishads. It's not even just a Puranic statement, but it's there in the Vedas themselves that the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, has multiple or multifarious energies by which he does everything. Swabhavik Jnana, Balakriyacha. And then again, he has his own self-expansions. Again, Krishna appearing in various expansions, and they're analyzed further in Chaitanya Charitamrita. You get into the particular Swayam Prakash, Vaibhava Prakash, and so on. You get into further technical science of the swamsa, of the internal forms, or the self-identical forms of Godhead. So all of this is included in the science of Krishna, but not included in the science of the impersonal, or even we could argue the limited science or of the impersonalists.
Saraswati Devi asks, empowered jiva tattvas like these two kings mentioned here may not necessarily be pure devotees then?
Not necessarily. Krishna can empower less than pure devotees if he wants. But yeah, there's nothing mentioned about that here. But in general, when we empower someone we trust. We empower someone we trust. But we may empower someone not for being a pure devotee, but for getting the job done. We can depend on the person. Whether or not he's 100% pure may not be the issue. I haven't seen any particular statement, but you're asking a theoretical question, so I'm giving a theoretical answer.
She says, thank you very much, Maharaj. And Bharai Gupta Prabhu says, from our perspective, does it make any difference what category of expansion or plenary aspect the Lord's appearance is? Should we try to figure it all out?
Well, it makes a difference, or it wouldn't be mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. The author went through the trouble of making or pointing out these distinctions, presumably because it's worth our while to know about them. And he was old, he had a lot to do, a lot to write about, but still he included these things. Now, to what extent do I memorize all of these things, and can I appear in an exam and answer, okay, now is this a Vaibhava Prakash or Swayam Prakash or this or that? We may or may not be expert in all of these things, but we should understand the principles involved, and that's otherwise why is it being expounded? It's useful. We want to know all about Krishna. Our subject matter is Krishna. We're interested in everything about Krishna. So we're interested in how he expands himself. We're interested in different kinds of expansions he has. We're interested in so many things. But we also understand that really we're not going to understand everything fully. Even, how exactly we get stuck at how can he be two people at once? How can Krishna and Balaram have different opinions if they're both Krishna? What does it mean that they're the same person? And so on, because it is inconceivable. At least we can't do it. None of us has the capability to be two people at once. But Krishna, he does it all the time. He's expanded throughout the universes and throughout the spiritual world in innumerable forms. Advaita Machuta Manadim Anantarupa Ajam Purana Purusham Navayoga. So Krishna can do all these things. And we're interested because we're devotees of Krishna. We're interested in what he does and how he does it. And sometimes particularly we're interested because we want to distinguish between who's Krishna and who's not Krishna, who's Krishna and who's falsely claiming to be Krishna. So if we're ignorant of the science, we won't be able to do that. We'll be in perpetual wishy-washiness. But so we're interested, and at the same time we understand that we'll never fully understand these things.
He says, thank you, Maharaj. And Praveen Krishna Prabhu says the categories conclude how every expansion is coming from Krishna.
Yeah.
And Saraswati Devi says, we would be classified as mentally challenged if we had split personalities. And we have reached our end of discussion. That the next verse has quite the purport, and it's actually the beginning of the narrative of the family of Dhruva Maharaj, the subject of this chapter. So probably best saved for next session. And Maharaj, do you have on site a quorum of eager kirtan participants there?
We'll have a quorum of one, but Vijay Krishna is here. We haven't heard his kirtan in a long time.
Then I think Vijay Krishna Prabhu will have to insist that you lead our kirtan.
Of course, Ekendra Prabhu. May I begin?
You may.
Thank you very much. You're most kind. Can you hear my mridanga?
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotar Sata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mayi Ki Jai Jamuna Mayi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Thank you, Maharaj, for giving us your association. Thank you, Vijay Krishna Prabhu, for the kirtan.
You're most welcome.
Saraswati Mata says, very nice kirtan. It always makes me want to dance.
Thank you, Saraswati Devidasi Mataji. You're most kind.
And Praveen Krishna Prabhu says, very palatable. Roy Gupta Prabhu says, thank you to all the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj Prabhu ki jai.
Jai.
Oh, and you're muted, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Yes, I noticed that. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai.
Jai.
Very well.
Hari Bol.
Thank you, Gurudev.
Thank you, Pancham.
Thank you, Guru Das Maharaj Ki Jai.
Thank you, Krishna Kantiya Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Thank you to all.